Hi everyone, I'm Anthony Vellante and welcome to this week's tutorial on 3D cameras. Now, I use Blender a lot for 3D work, but setting cameras up and having them move through space and animating and keyframing their position can take a lot of time. So in this week's video, I want to go over my setup on how to help speed up the process of animating the camera in Blender, Cinema 4D Lite, and After Effects. So here you have my setup in Blender. What I first want to do is create an empty and name it Dolly. Next thing I want to do is add a camera and then resetting its rotation by hitting Alt-R and then rotating on its x-axis being R and 90 so it's pointing straight, and then parent it to that null object we named Dolly. So now if you see, if you move the Dolly empty around, the camera will follow it. You can also rotate it. It'll pretty much copy all of its movement. And as well with the setup, you can move the camera independently of it and maybe push it up into maybe a different location, but it'll still follow the dolly relative to where it is set up. So let's go put that back in its space. So now what you want to do is create a target for the camera to point at. So we're going to add another empty or another null object and name that camera tracker. And we're going to take that and move it out in Y space, out in front of the camera. And then we're going to select our camera dolly, and we're going to go over to the Constraints tab. And then we're going to add the Track to constraint. And in the target field, you want to select the camera tracker. So now, whenever you move your camera tracker, your camera is going to go ahead and follow that movement. Now the reason I have it set up this way is if I want to move my camera independent of all the trackers, I can do that. Maybe if I want to add a camera shake to it, it's kind of hard to do that by keyframing it. And with this way, I can move my track points around independent, and I can also move my camera independently as well. So now let's go ahead and explore what else we can do with this setup by going back into Blender. So here we have another setup, a scene setup quick. Say I wanted to track my camera movement to this monkey head. So what we would do is we'd move the tracker point to the same location as the monkey head. You can move the camera around and it'll follow wherever the monkey is positioned. And what you can also do is parent your camera tracker to an object. And wherever that object goes, the camera will follow its movements. Another thing you can do with this setup is you can actually have your camera follow a path, and it'll always stay locked in with whatever you want it to look at. So let's go ahead and look at a way we could set that up. So I have a scene here with a path that was created, and we still have the tracker locked to the monkey head. So what we can do is select our dolly, and then select follow path, and select our path that we have in our scene. Now the camera moves because we've moved the camera from its origin point. So to fix this problem really quickly, we hit Alt-G to reset its position, and then move the tracker to constraint below the follow constraint. And now we have everything set up properly. So if we go over to the follow path and change its offset, you see that it follows the path that we've already preset. Now to go in and keyframe all this movement you want to with the camera alone would take forever. So with this setup, all you really need is a start and end point from the camera, and the trackers take care of pretty much everything else, and it'll save you a ton of time in post. But if you're not a Blender user like I am, you can always achieve this in Cinema 4D Lite. Cinema 4D comes free with your Adobe CC subscription because it's attached to Adobe After Effects. So let's go ahead and dive into that. So here we are in Cinema 4D. So what you want to do is first create a null object, and again, name it Dolly. And then go in and create a camera. Now let's go ahead and open all these view, and you want to zero out the position of the camera by going into coordinates and just zeroing out its rotation and position. So then drag your camera underneath the dolly null. So now it's attached to that. So if you move the dolly like we did in Blender, the camera follows its movement and rotation. And you can do the same thing as well. You can move the camera to a different position, and it should follow the rotation of the null. And you create another null, but this time I'm going to name it target, just because the terminology is different in Cinema 4D. So then move your target out in front, directly in front of your dolly track, and then go ahead and click on the dolly null, and then go to tags, Cinema 4D tags, target. And then what you want to do is drag the target null into the target object. So now if, like we did in Cinema 4D, when you move the target object, the camera follows its movement. And like we did in Blender, what you can do is create a path and have your dolly follow that path. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is just create a quick beveled path really quickly, just something really simple. Again, click on your dolly, go to tags, Cinema 4D tags, align to spline, and then take the spline you created and drop it into spline path. And when you change the position percentage, it does the same thing like it did in Blender, and it follows the path you created. And really quickly, like I did in Blender, we have the same setup. You can set a start and an end keyframe for your camera and save a whole lot of time. But say you want to do this kind of setup in Adobe After Effects. Well, got a really quick solution for you. So let's go ahead and jump into that. So here we have just a simple setup in Adobe After Effects. So what you want to first do is create a 3D null object. And the same thing as before, rename it dolly. And like we did before, create a camera. And like we did in Cinema 4D, we want to zero out its position because its default position isn't the actual 0 space. So we want to go in and make sure its Z space is set to 0, and then parent it by pick whipping it to the dolly. So like in all the other softwares before, you move your dolly and the camera should follow it. So I'm going to go ahead and drag it back here so we can see our background, so we can see what's going on. And then what you want to do next is create another null object, make sure it's 3D, and rename it camera target. Now what's different about After Effects is you're going to have to use an expression that I left in the description and type it into the orientation for the camera to have your camera follow the track point. So what you'll do is you'll go into the drop-down menu of the camera and Alt-click the orientation and copy and paste this exact command that I left in the description into the command prompt of the camera. So when you go ahead and move the camera target, the camera should follow it. And same thing if we move the dolly, and it should follow the target like it did in Blender and in Cinema 4D. Now, I can't take full credit for the setup in After Effects. I actually found this technique out from another YouTube video. I'm going to go ahead and leave that video in the descriptions below. He goes into more detail on what's going on with the expression and other things that you can achieve with it. But that is how I set up all my cameras in After Effects, in Blender as well, just because it saves time. Time is money. So if you found this video helpful, hit that thumbs up button. And if you have any questions or you have any topics you would like for me to cover, leave them in the comments section, or you can tweet them to me at DrewDiMolanta. I do tip and tutorial videos every week, so be sure to subscribe to be up to date on all of those. So until next time, I'm Andrew DiMolanta. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next week.